So you're moving to France and you're exploring all the important things you want to know before you get there. Have you thought about going to the pharmacy and prescriptions, and what do you do about all of that? Well, come with me. That's what I'm going to talk about today. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anne and this is Postcards from My Golden Years. I'm so happy to see you today. And welcome to all of my wonderful new subscribers. Thank you for having faith in me and deciding you want to join us on this wonderful journey we call life. So today, I'm going to talk about pharmacies and prescriptions in France. As you know, if you've been following along, my husband Jeff and I are moving to Nice, France in just 6 months. We woke up this morning and I said, just imagine 6 months to the day, we will be setting foot on Nice, France for the rest of our lives. And that's just this many days away, but who's counting, right? So I have been doing research on all kinds of things related to life, our new lives in France. And I've covered things like taxes and getting a driver's license, particularly if you're from a state with reciprocal agreements with France. And let's see, I talked about the inexpensive dental bills that we will have if we choose to go to the dentist. Of course we will. And let's see, what else have I talked about? I talked about how to find an apartment, what you need to have to put a dossier together to present to potential landlords. I talked about what we had to do to get our French bank account, which we're still not finished with. We have one more step when we go to Nice next month, and we just have to go visit with the banker at the bank. And once she meets us in person, she'll sign off on those papers, send it to the back room, and then issue us, well, send the papers to our US address so that we can start using the account when we get back to the US a few weeks later. So to start out, if you've been to France, you already know, but for those of you who have not and are armchair travelers, pharmacies in France are all designated by this bright green cross. And so wherever you are in France, if you see a bright green cross, normally it's a light, illuminated, or in the daytime. I don't remember if it's always illuminated. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But wherever you see this bright green cross, that tells you that it is a pharmacy. And the interesting thing is there are no chain pharmacies in France. Pharmacists are allowed to own one pharmacy. So every pharmacy in France is owned by one pharmacist. So that's why you're not going to see a bunch of CVS or Walgreens or Duane Reade. You're going to just look for that green cross, that green light outside of a building, and that tells you that it's a pharmacy. In highly populated areas, you're going to find more pharmacies. Now, pharmacies in France are different than the United States in that, let's take a typical CVS. You walk into CVS, the first thing that hits you are the aisles of candy and makeup, and you might find the photo area where they still develop print photos for those people who still have prints, or people who want to print from digital cameras. You have an area where they're selling, at least our CVS, they're selling boxed food like snacks, pretzels, potato chips, and things like that. There's another aisle where they have water, bottled water, laundry detergent. It's like a little mini grocery area. And then there's another area where you're going to find, hair appliances, blow dryers, and curling irons, and all of that kind of stuff. And if you're from the US, you know all the rest of the stuff. You walk into a CVS, and there are a lot of different things. So in France, a pharmacy is for prescriptions to be filled, medications, and you'll find also some beauty products. It's a great place if you're looking for some specialized lines of beauty that you can only get in France. If you go to a really good pharmacy, you'll find some of these in that particular pharmacy. You're not going to find tools for beauty. So you're not going to find the hair dryers. You're not going to find curling irons or electric shavers. You may find razor blades. If you have a razor, you may find that. I'm not sure. Actually, yeah, I guess you can find that. And you'll find things like typical first aid type things, Band-Aids and things like that. Years ago, I went into a pharmacy on my very first trip to Paris. I had blown out my hair dryer, and I just naturally assumed, well, I'll just go to the nearest pharmacy and they'll have one. And I found out that no, hair dryers are just not sold in pharmacies. And you have to go to sort of an appliance type store where they sell those kinds of gadgets and tools and more household type things. That's where you would find them. I'm even trying to think if I've ever seen hair dryers and curling irons in a Monoprix or Carrefour. I don't think I have. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about where to find hair dryers. That'll be another video. So for this video, I just want to talk about pharmacies and prescriptions in France. So typically, if you are not feeling well, the pharmacy is your first point of contact if you're visiting France. For example, last year on a high-speed train ride to Nice, I got up and lost my footing, and I fell into a baggage rack full of suitcases and luggage, and I hurt my back. And so the first thing I did when I got off the train was I went into a pharmacy and I asked for the pharmacist. Now, I speak French. Typically, pharmacists will speak a little bit of English, but I always start conversations in French. So I went in and I explained that I had a pain in my back and that I fell on the train. And so he immediately went in the back and he found an aspirin type thing. I have high blood pressure, so he had asked me if I have high blood pressure, which I told him I did. He gave me a pain pill that I could take that's mild enough to not disrupt my blood pressure. He also gave me a sort of a heat type, and I don't remember what it was called. Anyway, he told me how often to use it, and he was very, very helpful. Pharmacists, if you don't know any doctors or you're new in town, that's a great place to go before you decide you need a doctor, especially if what your problem is not something major. I recently read that in France, the government just passed a law now allowing pharmacists to issue antibiotics. Used to be, prior to the month of this September 2023, you had to go to a doctor. You had to find a doctor if you weren't feeling well, and if you had strep throat or something that required an antibiotic, you had to go to a doctor, and the doctor had to give you a prescription, and you had to take that to the pharmacy. Well, the government decided that because there are parts of France where there aren't a lot of doctors, and getting an appointment for a doctor is not as fast as it might be in the larger cities like Paris and Nice and Marseille and places with a larger population, a larger amount of doctors. So they approved now for pharmacists to diagnose what a person may have, and if they believe that an antibiotic would be helpful, they can issue the antibiotic without the doctor's prescription. So that is really great. Pharmacists in France go to college for about 9 years, and one of the things that they learn to do is make bioidentical hormones in university. And typically, from what I have read, there are no compounding pharmacies in France. The medications that your doctor prescribes for you are made by the pharmacist. Now, they don't typically advertise this. This adds on a lot of work for them. They can only sell you the bioidentical hormones by prescription, so you can't just walk in and say, hey, give me a vial of testosterone or something. You can't do that. But it's a little, I guess, not well publicized secret that the pharmacists in France have training in making bioidentical hormones. Now, I've done some research on the internet, and surprisingly, everything that I have read says that in France, bioidentical hormones don't cost anything, which is a great benefit of transferring to France and starting to use the doctors there. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find a specialist in France ahead of time that is an anti-aging bioidentical hormone not influencer, but somebody that works with these things. And from my research, I'm starting to believe that this is something that is so commonly used, recommending certain medications for arthritis or something, that doctors don't feel like they have to list it because it's a common thing. And everything that I am finding on the internet says France is one of the leaders in the world for bioidentical hormones. I'm just not finding a specialist. Here in the United States, if you want to use bioidentical hormones, you need to find a specialist who specializes in anti-aging and really knows their stuff. So if you're watching this and you're in France and you've come across a doctor that just prescribes this according to your needs and has picked up your prescription from the US and continued it for you, please, by all means, comment below. I could use the help. I know I've got plenty of time before I get there, and I can also chase it down. Now, once you move to France, after 90 days, you are required to apply to be part of the France national health system, which is great. As I mentioned in my last video, that health system isn't going to cost Jeff and I anything because it's based on income, and our only income is going to be our Social Security checks. They don't count Social Security as income for that particular purpose. So on that French health plan, a lot of our prescriptions will be covered at little or no cost. Now, the ones that have a copayment, the copayment is very small. And once we're on the health system, If we choose to get a top-up plan, which I talked about briefly in another video, my last video, that top-up plan would pay the rest of the co-payment for that prescription. But I'm hearing about prescription prices that are, $10, $15 for things that here in the United States we may pay, $60 for or $100 for. Not so much on Medicare, because I'm finding that on Medicare, with our Medicare supplemental plan, there is very little that my supplemental plan doesn't cover 100%. But it's nice to know that the things that would be out of pocket in France are very little because of the French national health system. In general, pharmacies have more deliveries from their suppliers. So if you order something from the pharmacy in the morning, you probably would have it in the evening. Interesting, pharmacies, I didn't know this, I never even thought about it, but pharmacies will check mushrooms for you, just as a little bit of trivia, so that you can bring in mushrooms. And pharmacists are trained, they learn this in university, they are trained to separate edible mushrooms from the not so edible. And whereas here in the United States, pharmacists pretty much have to stick to the prescription that your doctor sends over, pharmacists in France, they have a little bit of a degree of freedom, or I guess some of them just take it. So you can ask for small changes in your prescription, smaller dosages, or you can get an emergency supply of some common drugs if you're out and you can't get an appointment with a doctor right away. They can also, and some do, sell some medications without prescriptions. It's more common with creams and ointments than pills and capsules, but this is something that they can do. A prescription in France is called an ordonnance. So just like here in the United States, the prescription will detail the drug that you should take and the dosage. Now, if you are a new resident in France and new on the health system, when you go to the pharmacy, when it comes to paying, you're going to be asked for your carte vitale. And this is the card that ensures that residents in France are reimbursed by the government, either all or in part, for their medical expenses, so that your out-of-pocket will be a lot less. In addition, if you have a prescription from a doctor and your insurance provider, your top-up plan is going to cover the cost of that purchase, you need to ask for a feuille de soins. This is what a feuille de soins looks like. if you need an emergency pharmacy, this would be a pharmacie de gare. You can simply search online on the internet for Pharmacie de gare, and that'll give you a list of the pharmacies that are open for emergencies. So that's a good thing to know. And just like the United States, you can get your prescription filled at any pharmacy that you'd like to go to. But it's a good idea to go to the one that you're going to use most often, that for most people is probably closest to where they live. The advantage of doing this is that they have your files on hand, they know what prescriptions you're taking, and they get to know you. Particularly if you live in a small town, you pretty much get to know the pharmacist and he gets to know you and your family. And if you come in with a prescription, he's already got your file there, and if he sees some issue with your taking that medication while you're taking something else, then he'll call it to your attention. Another thing, if you go to see a doctor and let's say you have some sort of a wound that needs treatment, and you're going to have a nurse or somebody drop by to change the bandage or do something with that prescription, the doctor will give you the prescription for everything that that person is going to need to take care of that for you. So in other words, that person isn't going to show up with what they need to change your wrap or your bandage or whatever. You're going to have to go to the pharmacy and have it on hand at home, so that, for example, if the person's going to need specific kinds of scissors to cut a bandage, and the bandage itself, and cotton balls and things like that, you're going to get a prescription for all of that stuff, and you'll pick that up at the pharmacy so that you have it at home. I think that's kind of standard actually here in the United States as well. I don't recall, I mean, I haven't had issues, but I remember when my late mother was in a nursing home, before she went to a nursing home, she was having problems with wounds on her leg because of her diabetes. And she had a visiting nurse that came periodically to treat those wounds. And as I recall, she had to pick up a prescription for all of the stuff that visiting nurse was going to require. So I guess it's the same. Another thing that you can find at the pharmacy is flea and worm medicine for your pets. Who knew? Although I do think that some pharmacies here in the U.S. do fill pet prescriptions. I haven't done it, but it's good to know that you can get your prescriptions for your pets filled at the pharmacy nearest you. So when you go to the pharmacy, there are some key expressions you're going to need to know, because just in case you get there and whoever's behind the counter doesn't speak English, these are some expressions that you should make a note of and just, add them to your phone. Maybe take a picture, freeze the video and take a picture of them so that they're in your phone. And when you go to the pharmacy, there's some ready-made things to say to the person behind the counter. When you move to France, you need to take all of your medications in their original containers. All of my bottles of medication, they all have the prescription on the outside, the date of issue. All of that has to stay intact. And I know that some people are inclined to have those little pill boxes, Monday through Friday, and you put all your pills in the box. If you're moving to France, you need to bring everything in the original bottles. Don't take them out of the bottles and sort them into pill boxes. That will prove to be an issue for you if you're stopped at customs and they want to go through your things and you don't have a prescription, you don't even have the original bottles. So that's something to keep in mind. you need to bring a letter from the doctor and any supplemental files, health files, with the doctor's explanation for the conditions or illnesses that require the prescriptions that you're bringing. Nobody may ask for this until you go to the doctor. I mean, there's a slight possibility when you come through customs, in customs at the airport, they randomly check people. So if they stop you and you've got like a suitcase full of prescription medication, it's really going to be a good idea if you've also got a letter from your doctor explaining all of those prescriptions. And surely they understand that if you're moving from the United States to France, you're going to have more than just enough for a week or two. You're going to have something that you should be aware of if you're going to France, you're moving to France, and you take any kind of narcotic drugs or psychotropic substances. You can only bring those with you if you transport them on your person, and you can only have a quantity that is compatible with the therapeutic use for the prescription that you have. If you don't have a prescription for the narcotic drugs or psychotropic substances that you're bringing into the country, and you don't have the prescription on the medication, and or a letter, they recommend a letter from the doctor, then you're going to be subject to the laws of France and how France considers the import of those medications. So as far as bringing prescriptions from the United States, pharmacists can only fill prescriptions from doctors, issued from doctors in France. So you can't come to France with your paper prescription from your US doctor and ask a pharmacist to fill it. You need to go to a France doctor, wherever you are, and get a prescription. I mean, maybe you could show them the prescription that your US doctor gave you and ask if they can prescribe something similar, if in fact that's something that is available in France. Now, some people have asked me to do a comparison of prices between one prescription or another, the US versus France. I was going to do that. Unfortunately, it becomes too difficult to do that because I have no idea what kinds of prescriptions people are taking, number one. The cost of prescriptions here in the United States is going to vary whether you're on Medicare or you're not on Medicare yet, whether it's something you pay for out of pocket that isn't covered by insurance. There are probably thousands of types of prescriptions, and it would take me a month of videos probably to compare this prescription to the prescription in France and how much it costs in the US versus how much it costs in France. However, should I find some sort of a directory or guide online, I'll come back with another video and I will talk about it. But for this particular video, I'm unable to give you a list of US price prescriptions versus France. But let it suffice to say that everything that I've inquired about for myself personally is little or zero cost in France. So for me, that equals what I'm paying here in the US. I'm paying nothing on Medicare. My Part D plan picks it up. And if in France, the France health plan, the France National Health Plan covers the cost of those prescriptions, then costing me basically the same. So to those of you who have sent me notes and asked me to talk about prescription costs in France, I tried to come up with something, and I just wasn't able to find something that would satisfy everybody who's interested in how much things cost. The one thing that I did find out, in the United States, I have to have bioidentical hormones created for me at a compounding pharmacy, and my doctor creates a prescription for the content. They are made according to my hormone levels based on blood work that the doctor does quarterly. And the doctor sends over a prescription to a compounding pharmacy where those things are made to order. All of those things in a month cost me about $150 to $200 a month, which is a lot. What I have found online is the good news is that in France, they're all covered on the National Health Plan, and my cost will be very close to zero, which is great because $150 to $200 a month for bioidentical hormones is a lot of money when you're just living on a Social Security check. The cost of prescription drugs in France, in general, is significantly lower than it is here in the United States. Now, they don't have all of the prescriptions that we have, but they have, I would say, the major ones. Some of them are not approved. Some of the things that are approved by our FDA are not approved by their national health system in France. But the majority of things for major ailments that seem to be the most typically used drugs for diabetes, high blood pressure, other types of hypertension, and other ailments, regular routine ailments, arthritis and things like that, those things are very low in price compared to the United States. Now, you probably say, how can they do that? How come here in the United States, if I want to get this, my insurance covers either none of it or out of pocket, I've got to pay, $200 a month for this medication. What happens in France is that the pharmaceutical companies negotiate with the French government, unlike here in the United States. The pharmaceutical companies cannot be in the pocket of people in government. You can't have lobbyists somewhere lobbying for the government to not regulate costs. The French government restrains drug prices in part because its taxpayer-funded national health insurance program provides an important justification for implementing value-based regulation. Political campaign funding in France is strictly regulated, limiting the power of private companies to influence policy decisions. Seems to be that drug prices regulated at launch and substantial annual price increases, they're not allowed. So differences in prescription volumes and national health budgeting regulations may also explain why France spends less on brand name drugs than the United States does.
Close the curtain, brew some herbal tea.
Some people believe that France has the best pharmacies in the world. Paris in particular is a pharmacy utopia. I don't know this for a fact because I don't spend a whole lot of time in Paris pharmacies. I think the only thing that I have purchased in a pharmacy might be Band-Aids, other than the one time that I got hurt and had to get something for a bad back. Now, periodically people publish articles on the most fantastic pharmacies to go to. So far, I haven't seen anything about Nice, even though we're going to Nice, but I do love Paris, and we'll be going back to Paris next month and December, so I may check out these places. So when it comes to going to pharmacies for beauty products in Paris, two names stand out from research. Now, I still have to go there and verify it for myself, but one of them is CityPharma, and I will put the address right here on the screen. And the other one is Pharmacie Monge. CityPharma is by far the most famous pharmacy in Paris. Now the thing is, when you go there, you've got to be prepared because there are often a lot of people there. So you need to have a list of what you're looking for. It's not a great place to go in and browse. There are just too many people. Okay, conventional wisdom would say go there first thing in the morning before the crowds get there. The only problem is typically the staff is restocking the shelves first thing in the morning. But when you go there, you want to have a list of specific things that you're looking for. And for example, Bioderma micellar water seems to be a hot item, and these things are snatched up immediately. And articles that I've read have said if you see it there, grab it. Grab as much as you can, get it as soon as you walk in the store. Even if you don't need all of it, grab it the moment you walk in the store, because if you don't, someone right behind you may grab the last of it. So at least get what you think you might need, and then you can return what you don't need before you check out. But you at least want to grab that. That's probably one of the most popular things to grab at this particular pharmacy. I haven't tried that micellar water, so I don't know if it's wonderful or not. I have my brands here in the United States that I use for cleansing my face, but apparently this is like a cult classic. Some people recommend that a late evening visit to this pharmacy is probably the best, because you'll go when other people are dining and you'll have the store to yourself and you can be a little bit more leisurely. Homeophasmine and biotine. I don't know what these things are, but apparently these are really hot items at this particular pharmacy. I'm going to find out what they are when I go back to France. Go back to Paris, that is. When I go back to Paris next month, I'm going to go to this pharmacy and find out what is all this stuff. So the next pharmacy is Pharmacie Monge. Now this one is smaller pharmacy. And the interesting thing is that a lot of the prices and the signs are in French and Korean. And the explanation is, at one point, a South Korean blogger blogged about this particular pharmacy, and people from South Korea make it a point to go to this particular pharmacy. So they've had so much traffic from South Korea that the pricing and the signs in the store are in South Korean and French. This particular pharmacy, a lot of the treasures are behind the counter, so you have to actually go to the counter and ask for them. Now, I've read warnings or advice that aside from those two particular pharmacies, the best in Paris, that you should be careful when you go to other smaller pharmacies and you buy some of these things, because some of the other pharmacies price the same items, the same coat items, the same beauty items. You could be paying 50% to more than double the price at smaller pharmacies. Typically, pharmacy brand items are usually below 15 euros. And if you see things that are over 20 euros, that should raise red flags. So you don't want to spend that money there. Go to one of the two pharmacies that I just mentioned. Okay, without being in France, I think I pretty much covered pharmacies and prescription drugs to the extent that I can sitting here in Florida and the United States. It's just one more bit of research that I have done in preparation for my husband and my retirement to Nice, France. If you've got some suggestions on other things that I should research in advance of our trip, by all means, leave a comment below. I do read all of your messages, and for most of you who have already left messages, you know that I'm pretty responsive. Almost within the same day, you get a response from me. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was of value to you, and if it was, please give me a thumbs up. It really does help my channel grow. YouTube sees those thumbs up, and the more there are, the more it thinks, that's a good video. I guess more people should see it, and they'll show it to more people, and it helps me grow my channel. And I'm just amazed at how my channel has grown in the last few months. If you'd like to become a subscriber so that you don't miss any of my future videos, please, below the video, there's a little link you can click on to subscribe. And if you click the little bell over to the right of the subscribe icon, you will get a little notification every time I upload a new video so you don't miss any more videos. If you're not familiar with Patreon and you'd like to help support our channel, we would love that. The information can be found on Patreon, and here's the address for us on Patreon. It's also in the details that are below this video. And with that, I will say goodbye for now. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Have a great week. See you soon.